The year is 1705, and a German woman has just published a book of illustrations. One of the illustrations pictures a spider the size of a dinner plate eating a hummingbird. Europe's top scientists take one look at this drawing and say, "Absolutely not, ma'am. Sit down. Spiders don't do that. That's impossible." And the story behind the spider eating the bird is incredible. It involves travel, risk. This happened almost 150 years before Darwin's Voyage, and something that a woman would not normally do in 1705, given that their political and legal rights were so highly restricted back then. For perspective, there were still witch trials happening, and by the end of this video you will see how her life is a little-known spectacle, and a testament to an age where science could meet Indiana Jones-style adventure. This is the true story of Sybilla Merian, artist, naturalist, and quite possibly the most hardcore grandmother in the history of biological science. It's Frankfurt, Germany in 1647. Sybilla Merian is born into a family of engravers and publishers. Her father dies when she is 3, so her mother remarries a still-life painter who, in maybe the most consequential parenting call of the 1600s, decides to teach a stepdaughter how to paint flowers. This became her obsession. What you need to understand about 17th century science, it was mostly guessing with extra steps. The leading theory on where insects came from, for example, was spontaneous generation, which was the idea that flies simply assembled themselves out of rotting meat spontaneously. No eggs, no parents. A 13-year-old Maria starts locking herself away with jars of silkworms and caterpillars, patiently watching them for weeks to see what they would actually turn into. That's not just a cute childhood hobby. That's a kid quietly gathering the receipts to disprove the scientific theory of the day. And all she did was watch. But nobody really tried that part. At 18, she marries a painter, and we can see her life is literally dominated by the arts. She moves to Nuremberg and has 2 daughters. By the day, she's a respectable art teacher, giving embroidery and painting lessons to wealthy merchants' daughters. But by night, and I want to stress this is not an exaggeration, this was her actual life, she is running what amounts to an underground insect lab, raising caterpillars, tracking the molts, documenting exactly which plant each species eats, because she noticed they were picky, and apparently nobody had bothered writing that down before. So in 1679, she publishes a caterpillar book. And in the introduction, she essentially turns to the entire scientific establishment and tells them very calmly that she has personally raised 3 of these insects from egg to death, and can now confirm that none of them crawled out of rotting cabbage. And with that, she casually disproved 2,000 years of biology as a side project, while also running a needlework business. So here's a part where it gets a little bit unhinged. The marriage isn't going so well, and there's a nasty inheritance dispute in the family. So in 1685, Maria does what any reasonable person handling a rough patch does. She leaves her husband, packs up her mother and both daughters, and joins a strict religious commune called the Labadists, out at a place called Walfa Castle in rural Friesland. The Labadists only recognize marriages performed inside their own community, which means when you moved in and joined their community, you were functionally instantly divorced from your previous marriage. No paperwork, no argument, just a change of address, which would appeal to a lot of young women in those days. But here's my favorite part. The Labadists considered art worldly, vain, and a distraction from God, so it was banned inside the community. She was a professional painter. But she finds the loophole. Science was allowed, as long as you serve the faith. And conveniently, the butterfly was already the community's symbol of resurrection. For the next 5 years, Maria performs what is technically religious devotion, and in every observable way, exactly like staring at bugs. But here's a twist nobody sees coming. The man who owned the castle kept a personal collection of exotic specimens shipped in from the Dutch Suriname, a colony in South America. Butterflies, unlike anything in gray, drizzly Europe. Maria sees them and something in her brain quietly clicks. I need to go there someday. That thought is going to detonate her finances in about 14 years and completely change the scientific community. Sadly, her mother dies in 1690. Maria, grieving, decides she has outgrown the commune and its rules. She moves to Amsterdam with her daughter and finalizes her divorce. Now, Amsterdam in the 1690s is basically the Silicon Valley of exotic imports. It's a bustling port city where many new things lie waiting to be discovered. It seems every wealthy collector owns a cabinet of curiosities crammed with pinned beetles and dried butterflies, shipped in from colonies worldwide like they were the Pokemon cards of that time. Maria looks at these collections and is frankly unimpressed. Dead bugs pinned to velvet tell you nothing. What did it eat? What did it become? What did it look like alive? Nobody knew. So, and I cannot overstate how wild this decision was for a 52-year-old woman in 1699. She concludes that the only reasonable next step to see it for herself in person, to sail across the world and head into the South American jungle. And we know she wasn't crazy because before she leaves, she writes her will. And it's not a metaphor. She actually wrote a legal document. She was fully aware that she might not come back. She then sells 250 of her own paintings to fund the trip, boards a ship with her 21-year-old daughter, Dorothy, and sails for Dutch Suriname. No husband, no chaperone, just the two of them, and a treacherous 2-month Atlantic crossing. Now, it wasn't a quick tourist trip. She spent 2 years trekking through the jungle, documenting everything. She draws leafcutter ants forming actual living bridges out of their own bodies to cross gaps in the canopy. She draws insects beside the exact plant each one eats at every life stage. On a single page, egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, adult. A format that seems completely normal now because she's basically the one who invented it. And then there's the drawing that made her famous, the tarantula eating the hummingbird. A spider that size eating a bird? Yeah, sure. And yet, it's very real. Rare, but real. And confirmed by modern scientists. Her illustration is the entire reason giant tarantulas are still called bird-eating spiders today. In 1701, a bout of what was most likely malaria cuts the trip short. And Maria sails back home. From Suriname back to Amsterdam. In 1705, 4 years after that, she publishes Metamorphosis Insectorum Surinamensium. It has 60 hand-colored engraved plates, the most detailed record of a foreign ecosystem Europe had ever seen. It's stunning, and you can buy it today, reproduced. It was published in 1705, and you can still buy that book today. But back then it was brutally expensive to print, and it didn't sell as well as she needed it to. And as she aged in 1715, she had a stroke and she was partially paralyzed. But she kept working away because retirement was apparently never on the table for her. She dies on January 13th, 1717 in Amsterdam. And here's the detail historians still argue about. One official record lists her at the end as a pauper. Another record shows her funeral had 14 pallbearers, which is a lot of pallbearers for somebody with no money or status. She may have also died on the very same day Tsar Peter the Great of Russia was buying up the last of her paintings for his own collection. That's how significant they were to people with an eye for it. And for the next 200 years after, she was mostly forgotten. In a sense, the 20th century rediscovers her, and it turns out her drawings were so precise that modern entomologists can still identify the correct genus and often species for most of the insects in her 300-year-old book. In fact, Carl Linnaeus, the guy who invented the entire naming system that we still use today for every living thing on the planet, leaned on her illustrations to do it, more than 50 years after she drew them. David Attenborough, we all know who he is, has called her one of the most important figures in the entire history of studying insects. And Germany eventually put her face on money. So to recap, she was doubted by her continent's smartest men, banned from her own art by your own church, willingly risked a tropical disease to go stare at bugs on another continent, and still turned out to be right about the killer spider 300 years before anybody believed her. Not bad for somebody who started out as a kid with a bunch of caterpillars under her bed. If you're still watching, thank you very much. My name is Ian. I made this channel because I'd like to see more humans get into YouTube. I feel it has been dominated by AI slop for too long and it's ruining storytelling. I also made this video for my daughter who likes to play with mosquito larvae and other gross bugs, and for anyone that thinks that their contribution doesn't matter. If you're like-minded, please subscribe, like, and comment. Really appreciate it.